The consumer in China is actually becoming increasingly sophisticated. You see it everywhere, in the big cities especially. For example, we see it on the ground here with regard, the consumer trends and the influence it's had on, the likes of A2 Milk, Bellamy's, Blackmores. There's approximately $20 billion of Australian market cap that's exposed to the Chinese consumer in that regard. And you actually see it on the ground as well. The big corporates, Alibaba's, Baidu's, how much money they're actually investing in, the new world economy. For example, Baidu, it's fascinating. They've got these stores, H-E-M-A, I think you pronounce it Heme. They're quite remarkable. It's fresh produce. It's a big supermarket. You can eat there. You can buy your goods there. You can shop online. There's conveyor belts running around, people packing bags to get shipped off to their customers. And it was fascinating. Some of the big property companies that we spoke to said that these Heme stores have actually had an impact on apartment prices, in a close radius around them, because people want to be close to a Heme store. And with regard to the new world economy as well, I guess we have a look in Australia. There's a lot of talk about the lithium companies, cobalt, uranium, graphite, I beg your pardon. And on the EV front, we spent quite a bit of time going to see companies that were involved in that area. For example, Baidu, which is, I guess, the Google of China, they've recently just got approval. I think it's about 105 kilometers of roadway in Beijing later this year to actually start their autonomous vehicle driving program. SAIC, which is one of the largest Chinese manufacturers, they've got approval to start their program in Shanghai. So all of this, feeds through to end demand for materials. Once the EVs get more acceptance, that will then feed through to the battery technologies and the demand for the products that Australia can actually supply. The other side as well is the charging stations. A couple of people that we spoke to just outlined the actual programs they got in place. They're talking about a couple of years out having 500,000 charging stations in Australia. These are universal. China can do this. They'll fit any car. It's dramatic. It's impressive. They certainly can. If you take A2 Milk as an example, it's got a very good product that the market wants. The one thing you cannot ignore is a regulatory risk. As I mentioned earlier, to pretend to be an expert on China, I think is foolhardy. Regulation can just change with the stroke of a pen. However, if there's enough demand for a product and there's different channels to get products to market, different channels have different regulations. So you've got to watch those very carefully. And the way that we, treat these companies from a portfolio position is that you incorporate that in your weighting, your holdings of these respective companies, and you've got to make a judgment on that risk and who's got approval, who hasn't got approval, who's got contracts in place to supply the ingredients, who's got the channels in place. And I think suffice to say, the market, many of these companies are still feeling their way through.